Hey, good evening, Hermosa Beach. I'd like to call to order the Parks, Recreation, and Community Resources Advisory Commission meeting for Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. And I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody please stand. Put your right hand on your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Okay, let me get my glasses on. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Maroney?
Here.
Commissioner Horowitz?
Here.
Commissioner Ellman?
Here.
Vice Chair Pizer Maines?
Here.
Chair Lang?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Awesome, thank you very much. Do we have announcements of upcoming city events?
Well, I don't have an announcement on upcoming city events, but I do want to thank Hermosa Beach Little League for an amazing openings season day. It was amazing, and I don't know how these people can get that many kids organized with hats, uniforms, and it was a great day. I love walking down the street and seeing all the parents and the kids walking to Clark Field, and it's one of my very favorite days, and another great celebration. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, they did a spectacular job. Any other announcements from my fellow commissioners?
And I have the upcoming city events presentation,
Awesome.
Chair
Thank
Lang.
you.
And good evening, commissioners. We'll queue up that presentation. The upcoming city events presentation. Oh, okay. Just one moment here, technical difficulties. And I don't have the presentation up on my end, so I was counting on the screen. I could probably pull it up if need be. Okay, there we are. All right, so on this first slide here, we have the permitted special events in the month of March. So we just had the Hermosa Beach Little League opening day, as Commissioner Elman shared, on March 1st. We have the Interscholastic Beach Volleyball League Tournament Series on March 2nd, the AAU Southern Pacific Grand Prix Series on March 9th, Redondo Union High School volleyball matches March 11th through the 13th and 25th through the 27th, St. Patrick's Day Parade on March 15th, SoCal Beach Foundation volleyball tournaments on March 16th and the 29th, the beach tennis tournaments on March 21st through the 23rd, and the California Beach Volleyball Association on March 23rd. So a full month of permitted special events. Next slide. We also have our second partnership event with Alcove Beach Cities, and it is the Pizza, Painting, and Ping Pong event that will take place on Thursday, March 13th from 4 to 6 p.m. in the South Park building. So we join young adults ages 12 to 25 to join us for that event. Next slide. We have our monthly excursion, and it is taking place on March 26th. It's a studio tour of Warner Brothers Studios and a visit to the original farmers market at the Grove. Next slide. And we have several productions in the community theater and the second story theater that you see listed on this slide. And we also have a flyer that is posted at hermosabeach.gov/theater, which details a description of these productions and ways to get tickets and show times. And that concludes the upcoming city events presentation.
Awesome, thank you so much. Seeing we have no presentations for agenda number 5, we'll move on to Community Resources Director report, please.
Thank you, Chair Lang. We also have a presentation to accompany this verbal report. Next slide. First, we wanted to begin with a reminder that the Community Center East Lawn is undergoing reseeding, and it is going to be finalized this week. March 6th is the date, and then it will be reopened. Next slide. We also want to provide a reminder that registration did open yesterday for all spring, summer recreation classes, camps, excursions, and leagues. And you can find more information and view the recreation brochure at hermosabeach.gov/recreation. Next slide. And this last slide we have started to add to the director's report, and it really talks to future agenda items. So it will either be items directed by City Council or items requested of the Commission. And the first item is a council-directed item for the Commission to review in the month of April. And for some background on this, at its February 25th City Council meeting, staff requested that Council award a contract for construction for capital improvement program project 619, which is the Kelly Court improvements. That would have included renovating the existing pickleball, tennis, and basketball courts with court restriping and surfacing, amongst several other upgrades. It would essentially allow for the city to also reopen the 2 pickleball courts that have been currently closed following completion of the project. City Council did not approve the award of construction contract and rejected all bids, directed staff to have the commission review the project at a future commission meeting to allow for an additional opportunity for public input on the project. So staff is currently preparing this item for the commission's April meeting, and following the commission's review, the project would then be reviewed by the city council at a meeting date to be determined. So staff is sharing this with all of the pickleball members, and will also be sharing it with any residents that we have contact information on file for, and the stakeholder group that had formed the current use policies and hours with us, just so everyone that we have on file, contact information we have on file, is notified that is coming back to the commission, and of this update, since we have been updating the pickleball community on the design phase, and they were expecting the construction, or the award of construction contract to be done at that meeting. So they have since been updated, and will continue to update, again, the residents and our stakeholder group this week. And the other 2 were commission requested items, and that is a contract class program and essentially Live Hermosa Recreation brochure review. And so that's a review of our current programming, a review of the recommendations for programming that came forth in the Parks Master Plan, and a review of how the brochure is advertised. And so that is going to be coming back to the commission in April, now that the spring and summer brochure has been finalized and, again, was just released this week. And then the remaining item is the park hours, which we still have a meeting date to be determined. We have held 3 internal meetings and are trying to form the final recommendation for this item to bring it back before the commission. And that concludes my Community Resources Director report.
Awesome, thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to,
Yeah.
oh,
I can ask some questions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Lisa, I want to follow up on a couple of emails. And before I do that, I want to apologize to my fellow commissioners if I talk too much tonight. You can take solace in my term is up in June, but I do have a lot of things I want to say tonight. We exchanged an email about this group that's getting behind the dog park. They have like a campaign, a sign effort, they have a website. And I had asked you whether there were anything further the commission could do on this, since the Joint Commission had recommended that a dog park be one of the things the City Council looks to do going forward. And your response to me was that it would be addressed, if at all, would be addressed by City Council as part of the budgeting for each year. So if they want to take it up, they would take it up in the coming months as part of where we're going to spend money this year or next year or whenever it may come up. My follow-up question is, as part of the budgeting in front of council, are these groups given an opportunity to present what they want, or are they just given the opportunity to share their thoughts as part of public comment?
They are given their opportunity to share their thoughts during the public comment, and as well as the public comment for the agenda item if they didn't address their thoughts in that first public comment period. And I see city attorneys.
Correct, and then also, that is obviously the most public forum for which they can share their public comments. City council members also have dedicated city email addresses that oftentimes many members of the public reach out if you want to provide a more substantive document, things like that.
All right, what the thought I want to share with the commission and with Lisa is maybe because the dog park came out of the Joint Commission recommendation, and Clark Field improvement also came out as a consensus recommendation. Could we, or would we be interested in reaching out to those 2 groups and giving them a presentation slot in front of us in April or May? They could present, do their slides, tell us what they're thinking, answer our questions. That would give them a dry run. They could then hear the kind of questions they might eventually get from council. Occasionally, our meetings are watched by council members, so it might actually get the information in front of some council members. We would have to make it clear that it's not an action item for us. I mean, we would not be taking action. It'd just be an opportunity for them to present their ideas. I mean, that's my thought on that, and if anyone else, thinks that's a good idea, maybe we can let that happen in April or May. The other email I wanted to follow up on is Ray Jackson sent an email about these pre-Olympic training areas where the Olympics are offering or suggesting that we can provide an area, a forum for the teams to practice before the games actually begin. And the thought would be in Hermosa, we would provide some volleyball courts. Are we following up on that? Are we applying for that?
We are following up on it, we're looking into it, and we will be discussing it, and I can certainly keep the commission up to date if we are submitting applications to serve as training locations. I have reviewed all the really requirements and what's being asked and what would be needed, and I have shared that with the team. We just need to have a formal conversation about it.
All right. And then the last comment I would make is this idea of the CIPs coming for the parks, coming to us before the contracts are actually entered into is a terrific idea, and I would encourage the city to expand that to all of the park improvements, that we see them before we commit to what we're doing. And that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you. Lauren?
Yeah, I had a list of things as well. So I'm hoping we can get more of a thorough readout on the recent, the February 25th council meeting. There was a lot of parks-related items mentioned. Though in regards to the dog parks, I do think, that was a big item when we were discussing and formulating the Parks Master Plan. And I thought at some point maybe we were discussing a subcommittee, a joint committee of parks and maybe city council. And I think with all the interest in that, we should do something like that to really figure out the issue or what kind of options there are, as opposed to this being addressed as a city council budget item that people can make public comment on. I think we should be more thoughtful about it. So it seems to me that we should make a recommendation that a joint committee is formed to dig into that issue. And maybe along, I don't know, with the Clark Field, but is that something we could maybe vote on as a commission as a recommendation? And then, let's see, and with the Olympics thing, that's really interesting. And I know that I would want to be informed of what's going on with that. I think it's a great opportunity for the city. I was hoping that we would try to get more proactively in the mix with some of the Olympics stuff. When I met with the Consul General of France, based in LA, we did a readout and walkthrough of the Paris Olympics, and I'm hoping that LA adopts some of those measures, which are involving communities, not just in the heart of the city, but all over. And it'd be wonderful for us to have even like a presentation stage here or something. So I think it's well worth our while and being proactive on that. So the items from the city council meeting that I'm hoping, Lisa, you can just kind of update us on or touch on. There was I think it was on consent calendar, the Friends of the Parks movies, LTA, the LTA Day at the Beach, just so that people that, commission members that weren't at the meeting get an update on that. And then I would like to get your read out and update on the discussion on the Clark Building on rates and use, because I think that what we presented was changed. And I'd like to be able to compare that. I have some printouts, but I wasn't quite sure. They were all over the place, and I wanted to see exactly where they landed, because I was a little bit concerned that after 15 years of, staying at the same rate, that it was good to do something that was more responsive to the community, but I'm afraid that we may have slid a little bit too much backwards on that, and not giving enough value to that venue. And then South Park, the slope project was presented, the CIP 603. And I was trying to recall when we last saw that CIP or had a discussion on the slope at South Park. I was looking at past presentations on it, and it goes back a number of years in terms of when we first discussed the need to stabilize and fix that slope. But now in that presentation, I was kind of concerned to see, and this wasn't presented before us, that the CIP seems to be expanded. And now we're talking about possibly removing some of the grassy areas at South Park. So I was wondering if I could get clarification on that. I went by there today, and I think it was mentioned that whole area around where the restrooms were placed, which I didn't really like the placement in the center of that picnic area, but, you know, removing the grass all around there, and what are we replacing it with? And I think there's some sort of a grant, but we shouldn't just change things because there's a grant available. So I think that was my list. Thank you.
Okay. Did any other commissioners have any items before I respond?
Yes. So I'm going to go backwards here. The city attorney, we have working groups, we have subcommittees. What options do we have that the CIPs, we don't seem to communicate with Public Works. And I'm kind of curious to know what it is that we can do that would allow us to better understand where we do cross over. And I don't think that it's realistic to ask us to attend more meetings, but at the same time, maybe that's what we have to do. Because the CIPs that we're talking about, the CIP at South Park, the CIP for the Clark Field area, basketball courts, pickleball courts, volleyball, tennis courts, we weren't included in that. And so the question is, do you have a suggestion of what it is we could do that would allow this to happen? Do we need to go to the council and say there needs to be, you know, a checkoff box on a CIP that crosses over, that we've seen it, we've had a presentation?
Right, so thank you, Commissioner Elman. So I mean, when you say, is there anything that that needs to be done for us to be allowed to do that? I am comfortable with the way the municipal code reads. This is in your purview, such that this is not, hey, the Parks and Rec is going to start reviewing the budget, the Parks and Rec Commission is going to start doing something outside of that. It really is kind of a confluence of a multitude of factors. One being the operational decisions and constraints on city and city staff, to the timing of preparing RFPs, receiving bids, and then potentially awarding those bids. But it really is something that probably easily, I don't want to say easily, but could be done. And whether that come from direction from council, which some of it did come, or a staff-initiated change, those are all viable options. So I know that's, I really don't have a suggestion because it's not necessarily a legal issue. Mm-hmm. It is within your guys' purview, albeit not, there's nothing, I similarly can't point to anything in the public contracting code or anything in our law that says this commission must sign off on any and all CIP projects and contracts prior to award. That's that's the other side of the coin there.
Okay, because I do think that there's just this unusual disconnect, and I thought that was brought out, unfortunately, very well when we found out that the construction at the pickleball courts, basketball courts, was going to happen during Little League season. And these are the kind of things I think we would have fleshed out if it had come before us. So I am asking staff to look into what it is that we can do so that we can sign off that we've really been engaged in. I don't think it should be the amount of money spent. It just has to be the amount of crossover. Regarding the dog park, I really like the idea of asking this group to come before us with what it is they've done. They're obviously not just passionate, but very organized in what they've done so far, and I think we could learn a lot from them. And Lisa, do we have an update on the beach volleyball courts, the program?
Staff hasn't had the resources to advance that project.
Okay.
And I'll touch more on that when I respond on some of the other items that were brought up as well by other commissioners in this section of the agenda. So we've been really tasked with trying to finalize the 2 naming recommendations so that we can close out the work of that subcommittee. Because at this rate, we really are in a place where it is very difficult to be working on one subcommittee matter at a time. So the plan was always, in the beginning of the year, to work on and prioritize the volleyball court use policy subcommittee, followed by the municipal lease policy subcommittee. But then we were tasked with the naming subcommittee, so we wanted to make sure to prioritize that work. It is not as intensive as a project, so that we could move forward with closing out that subcommittee, retiring them, and then moving to the volleyball court use policy work.
Perfect. Regarding moving on to the new CIP for the Clark area, you talked about reaching out to the neighbors and to the pickleball people that we know. Are we talking about a 500-foot announcement? Are we talking about putting up signs at the pickleball courts to let people know that this is going to be on our agenda?
It was not directed to have this return as a public hearing item, so we would not be doing public hearing notices. We would reach out to the contacts that we have on hand, which are all the pickleball members. I don't have that exact count in front of me, but I think it's several hundred. And the residents that may have reached out since the adoption of the court use policies and hours, sharing any feedback about any noise impacts. At this time, there is one resident that has reached out, but that's where we would also go back to our stakeholder group that helped us form the court use policy and hours and share with them that this item is coming back to the commission as well, so, and ask them to share the information with any neighbors they may a posting at the courts, but there's not going to be an official mailer.
Okay. But I do think that an announcement in that area on the fence around the basketball courts and the entrance to the tennis and pickleball area should all be have a sign there, because one of those orange signs will have a better chance of people seeing that. Our camps, our summer camps went online yesterday or today?
They went online yesterday?
Yesterday. So how many, I don't know if you can break this up. My understanding that everything is full. That
Everything is not full. Valley Park Summer Day Camp typically sells out the first day.
Okay.
So that's been pretty true to every year when registration starts for spring and summer classes, that Valley Park Day Camp sells out.
And my understanding, we have as many as 60 kids on a wait list?
I don't have those numbers
Okay.
in front of me for each week, but that can certainly be part of the recap that's provided next month. But we immediately did have people on the wait list as we sold out.
And do you know how many kids are in that camp?
60 per
So
week.
60 per week. And then we had considered, if I remember correctly, last year of a stiffer cancellation penalty. Were we able to do that? I know that some people double or triple book themselves.
We were able to modify the refund policy to address any concerns we had with late cancellations and not being able to fill those spots. So
Okay.
we haven't had that be a recurring issue since those policy updates were made.
Okay. And then I think the city attorney answered that for me. Like I said, I just think there has to be a way that we can work together with Public Works. I just think we can be of service, that we know what the positives and the negatives are to a lot of the parks or a lot of our programs. So I think that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
A lot of good thoughts and questions. Can you refresh my memory? Did the new design for the Kelly Courts come back to our commission? Because I don't recall ever seeing it.
No, that's not typically the process that's in
Okay.
place right now with any capital improvement projects.
I didn't
The
think so.
way that the commission is involved right now in the CIP is annually we come to the commission before the CIP study session and we do a full report on all the CIPs that may be considered and pertaining to Parks and Recreation or in the purview of the commission. We give a status report on those CIPs at the time and really a look into that upcoming year on what the schedule may be for those CIPs. And we ask the commission to provide feedback at that time. We share the scope of the project. So both of these projects we have been updating the commission on in this way. And then we also have our periodic updates in the Community Resources Director's report that speaks to where we're at with the design as we're nearing completion, when we expect the award of contract to be, and then as well as what the construction timeline may be for those projects. So that's the practice that's in place. And we have discussed internally as a staff team the conversation that happened pertaining to the feedback from the Kelly Court Improvement Project and also the comment made during the Southport Park irrigation project being considered by the council. And I really think at this point, it would be a conversation at the CIP study session that council would need to be aware of. If we were to change these practices, it's going to delay the CIP in some way because we'll have to adjust the timeline to commission meetings and prepping the item for the commission to review. So I think there just needs to be an understanding and direction provided by city council on changing that process, impacting the timeline a little bit, and what are the qualifications for an item to come before for a project to come before the Parks and Rec Commission.
I understand that. I think it can only benefit the city and the residents to have more opportunities to hear what's happening. And in regards to Commissioner Elman's statement about some sort of working group, even if it's something as simple as a liaison, somebody from our commission, someone from Public Works Commission, to talk after the meeting, so no one's having to attend all the meetings, but get a synopsis of it, to then bring back to our commission to report, so that everybody feels really up to date, and a way for us to potentially work more in tandem and know what each commission is doing and where everything is, so that it doesn't have to be maybe as extensive as altering our whole process, but a better communication between the two commissions, because there's so much overlap, and then somebody doesn't know, and then the city doesn't know, and the residents don't know, and just gives an opportunity for more feedback and information.
What I want to say, this isn't in any way trying to extend any timelines or anything else, but I think, not that we necessarily need a checkoff, but if something that's come before us and we've discussed, and then it has substantially changed, or the use has changed, or the areas have changed, then I think, like with South Park, that was first presented to us or discussed like in 2021. And so it's not like we're now rushing to the finish line. We've had a lot of time there to weigh this out for it to change. And I don't know when it changed and became a larger project, but I think it does benefit from us having an updated conversation, looking at the project that's changed significantly, and then discussing, any kind of use ramifications, which is our purview. So that's where I'm coming from, is that if something has changed, not to gum up the process, but we do take our time in, because everybody's so overwhelmed and there's a lot going on. We do have projects that go on for several years or so, and so there's time to bring it back before us and or update us on some of these critical projects that involve, especially our larger parks.
Is that all? Cool, thank you. Lisa?
Thank you. Okay, so just to respond to some comments I know I have already, regarding the suggestion to invite the dog park group, and I know they have a formal name, and we're not using it right now, but they do have one. I'll look it up in a second. And really any user groups that may be interested in voicing support for projects, a great time to do that is when we bring the CIP to the commission for review, because that would provide an opportunity for the public to provide feedback on the current CIPs and ones that may not be on there that they wish to be on there, such as the feasibility of adding a dog park or dog-friendly amenities to a park. And that way, the commission could hear that, and the commission could certainly provide in their feedback, which is given to city council at their CIP study session, any of the commission's input or suggestions for those projects. So I think that's a great time to share and invite the community groups to come, and that's just a suggestion for the commission to consider. And regarding the other items that were on the council's agenda, Movies at the Beach was an agreement that the commission had recommended we move forward with negotiating, and council had affirmed, so it has been approved as initially presented to the commission. On the movies would take place the day after the concerts, which are the 2 Saturdays following Labor Day weekend, and then the concerts happen on the Sundays, and that's a 3-year agreement. And it's really upholding what we've had in place with Movies at the Beach for several years now. So it's really just solidifying the partnership that we really were able to demonstrate with such a success with the 2024 concert series and Movies at the Beach. And then regarding the Hermosa Beach Open, Day at the Beach events had applied for a long-term agreement for that, for them to hold the Hermosa Beach Open. And from 2025 to 2027, staff negotiated such an agreement and negotiated it in the way that we do negotiate agreements in the long-term agreement program, upholding many of the terms that are standard in any agreement that's adopted through that program. And so council approved the agreement as presented. And at this time, I don't have more of a formal update because we do not have confirmation of Day at the Beach's intent to move forward with that agreement as adopted. There is a concern and request for additional fee waivers that are not approved through that agreement. So we've provided some options, and we're talking through those options with Day at the Beach.
Thank you. Did you have all your questions answered?
There was the Clark
yes,
Building
I'm
use
sorry.
and rates.
Yes, so I was going to send a link to the commission because it was a very lengthy conversation. Essentially, the recommendation from the council was to reduce the nonprofit hourly reservation rates by 50%, but an additional 10% during the hours of opening to 5 p.m., so 60% during those hours. So this is where it can get very confusing, and I thought a link to the staff report would help. And to reduce the resident hourly reservation rates by 40% and an additional 10% during opening hours to 5 p.m. And to also provide for a discount of 5% to any residents that utilize a Hermosa Beach-based business for catering or beverages, food or beverage services, really, for their reservation. So I'll provide a link because we did try to make the staff report as clear as possible on the changes. So I do have that staff report pending approval, and as soon as it's approved, I'll provide it to the commission. The plan is for council to review that one more time and to discuss that at its March 25th meeting. And that will also be part of my email update. But I think having the conversation tonight about looking for updates on items that the commission had previously discussed and really the outcome of it. We used to have an agenda item, it's just coming to my mind, where we had a staff report that really spoke to items previously on the commission's agenda, and the update was, we will start doing that again. I'm actually not sure when we stopped doing that, so I'd have to look back in my records, but I think that would be a useful tool for us to track when an item's been completed too, right? That has been on the commission's agenda. And then also speaking to the South Park slope and irrigation repairs, I haven't presented anything outside of the general scope of this project to the commission, so therefore I'm not sure what the understanding may be about a significant change because it hasn't changed as far as I've understood the project to be or the scope of the project. So I will discuss that with our Public Works Director and see if he can really work through that with me, and we can follow up with the commission on that. Because again, our comments on the CIP have been really limited to the general scope and purpose of the project, and of course the other items I mentioned, like the award of construction timeline and everything like that. And I also just wanted to say, noted on the signs for the Kelly courts, that was part of the plan, really, was to take the information that we were emailing out after all the emails have been sent to put that on the courts. And thank you for your comments about the liaison. I know we've talked about that before, maybe having the Public Works Commission have a liaison that came to our meetings and vice versa, as suggested. So I think when we are discussing at the CIP study session a way to have the Parks Commission be more involved in the CIP review process, that can certainly be something that we discussed about too at that time as an option. And I believe I've responded to all items, but let me know if I missed anything.
You did, and I just wanted to say that I was looking through the South Park, all the versions of the CIPs, the map and everything else, and it does include that whole north section of the park, and there was discussion of, removing the grassy areas, and in my mind, we have a lot of homes here with kids that don't have areas for them to play on, and so, if the plan is in the CIP, and I appreciate you looking into it further, is to then replace the grass with landscaping. That's not very play friendly. So I do appreciate an update on that. If we could find out more about that. And just lastly, and I'm going on a lot tonight, so my apologies. But in regards again to the dog park, I don't know why, and I don't think it's on your part, Lisa, or anything, but there seems to be a hesitancy in doing any sort of like a subcommittee or having kind of deeper conversations on that. And I think the process is a little bit askew when you do things without as deep of a community engagement, and then you present a CIP to us, versus having a subcommittee, meeting with residents, doing what they need to do, really researching the issue, and getting that input prior to when we even think about doing a CIP. So I think it's, in a sense, a cart before the horse on that. And I also, with the, don't kill me, Barbara, but we do have a pickleball expert on the commission, and it seems to me that it would be useful to have, Barbara in the mix, Commissioner Ellman in the mix, as we
I'm
figure
sorry,
this
the mix
out.
for,
For the pickleball, for
are
the,
you about the CIP?
as we look at,
Okay.
yeah.
I just
yeah.
didn't know what you were
Yeah.
volunteering
Yeah, no, I went
for.
from dog park to pickleball. Yeah.
Lisa, I think
that's it.
if I remember correctly from the Clark building, that they're going to review that rather quickly. Was it 9 months or was it a year, the program? I know they discussed it, I just don't remember at the very end.
For the Clark Building, it's a year. We would come back with a report, and I would bring that report to the commission first, so that
Right.
you would also be able to
But they
hear
wanted to see how
the usage details. Yeah.
Yeah.
The feedback we have from reservation holders on the policy, and any feedback we may have from the surrounding community.
Because I think we forgot to tell everyone they changed the hours.
Oh, yes, and we modified, so sorry, I didn't have the full, my staff report's not finalized, so I don't have it fully in front of me. We also had a recommendation to modify the hours on Friday and Saturday to 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., that's the operation hours, and to allow for the amplified sound to be extended on those days till 10 p.m.,
Where it originally was 9.
where it was originally 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. each day throughout the week. And just speaking to the dog park, we aren't saying that we wouldn't have a subcommittee be a part of the process. The thing is that council needs to direct us to advance that project, and part of that project would be a subcommittee, really, because the first step really is going to be extensive best practice research, and that would be what the subcommittee would help with. But we would need council to prioritize us advancing that work, or putting that work ahead of other existing subcommittee work, because we don't want to be in a position where we're creating a subcommittee right now, not knowing if it's going to become an established project or if there's interest of council to direct staff to put resources towards this, and have a subcommittee, that has sitting that's not been able to be advanced for several years due to limited resources. So we just need that direction on either prioritizing that before or starting it after the other subcommittee work has been completed.
Thank you, I appreciate that clarification. When I heard CIP, though, I thought, okay, well then, there's the thought of moving forward on a CIP, so then...
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
that's just the best time, I think, for these community organizations to come and address the council. Like, we understand these are the projects and this is a schedule, but there's community interest for this, and then council can have a discussion. Yeah.
Any further questions? No? Lisa, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to public comment.
This is the time for members of the public to address the commission on items on and not on the agenda, but within the commission's jurisdiction. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes and will be taken in person only. A total of 30 minutes will be allocated for this comment period. A reminder that if you address the commission on a discussion item, you will not be able to address the commission on the same item when it is heard at a later time. Do we have anyone in the chambers wishing to be heard?
How you doing, Commission? Mark Paului, Hermosa Beach resident. First of all, I want to thank you guys for your support with the Hermosa Beach Open, and getting that through here, and then having the council here through it and supporting it for the 3-year deal. We're very excited about that, and we're also, looking forward to growing that with the city as well. Last year's event worked really well, and people literally around the world were very happy about it, and are actually looking forward to participating in it or even coming out to see the event. So with a lot of response like that, and with the, hopefully with a lot of the sponsors returning as well, which I have some verbal commitments with a lot of them, that I think this event will be a very successful one as well. And with that, though, is part of the question and request from myself and to you guys, is that I'd like to see, the city is a partner of this event, and I'd like to see a little bit more partnership with this event to help make it grow. I also want to see, or I think would be a great idea, is that the city owns the right to the event, meaning the owning of the name of Hermosa Beach Open, and to take more control of that event, and not necessarily have to run it. It's not saying the city would be the ones to be able to manage it and run it, but then they can go to contact, promoters or Pro Tour and say, look, come and do the Hermosa Open here. But then you guys would be able to manage it more efficiently in regards to helping support the event, so that fees are better structured for these type promoters coming in, especially like in our situation we're in now, to be able to get supported in making this event develop. It's a big part of Hermosa Beach. It's been here for over 50 years, and it's recognized worldwide. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm Gail Rose, 545 11th Street in Hermosa. I'm here because of the issues that you've been talking about, of the development and the new construction over at the pickleball and tennis and basketball, and the time that it's planned. My question is, I'm a resident who's directly affected by the construction and by the sound of the pickleball, and so I'd like to be request that the residents be included in when they finally decide on the times that people will be playing and what days the courts will be open, because we made modifications that made it kind of tolerable for the surrounding neighbors, and also that we be notified and included if there's going to be a large number of people over at the courts with round robins and things, that becomes very disturbing. It's just a matter of letting us know about the impact of the sound in the play. And I thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay. See nobody else, we'll,
Ask the city attorney a question about, where Hermosa Beach Open, we talked about the city taking ownership of that name. Because Manhattan Beach did that. Can you give us an update on that?
I may refer to the director. I believe we have finalized and submitted applications to the USPTO, which kind of where my jurisdiction unequivocally ends. And so now it's kind of a waiting game on them to see what they say.
So we've done our part, and then we're just waiting, and we could wait 30 days, we could wait 90, 100, I mean, I could answer that
Yeah,
if
go
you'd
ahead.
like.
It could take several months for our applications to be assigned essentially to a case manager, and there's really no time frame from that point. It could be quick, it could take several more months, but all applications have been filed for a California service mark and a United States service mark.
Okay.
I was going to close public comment and then open up to commissioner comments.
Oops.
No, it's okay, I love it. Start to my left, Tom? No? Lauren? No? Tracy?
PTO, patent and trademark? Is that PTO?
Yeah, the United States Patent and Trademark Office, USPTO. I apologize for the
No, that's
use of the
okay. I
acronym.
got it.
Correct.
I got
Yeah.
it, thanks.
Barb?
Okay, so do we take ownership, we own the Hermosa Beach Concert Series, correct? That's us.
Yeah, that's a city staff and hosted event.
Okay. And the parade, we don't have, we support the parade, but that is all through the Chamber of Commerce.
Correct.
Is there another, am I not remembering something else that happens here that,
Surfers Walk of Fame?
yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. So what Mr. Palui is asking for is not unusual.
It is unique. We don't have ownership over another event that the city doesn't literally plan, produce, market, create marketing materials for, and staff.
Okay. But the city of Manhattan Beach does that. So this is not unheard of.
It's not unheard of.
not-
It's my understanding that the city of Manhattan Beach essentially contracts out with AVP to host the Hermosa Beach Open. So they have a completely separate agreement, not comparable to a long-term agreement. It would be an agreement outside of that for us.
Okay. Thank you.
All set, okay. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Does anybody want to pull any of the items, or would somebody like to make a motion to receive and file?
I'll make a motion to receive and file.
Awesome. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Voting is now open. Vice Chair Pizer Maines,
Yes.
Chair Lang,
Yes.
motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Moving on to public hearings.
Okay, just queuing up the presentation. Okay, we can go ahead and advance to the next slide. This item is staff's recommendation that the commission hold a public hearing to recommend for approval by City Council the inclusion of the LA King Smart Water and Coca-Cola Hydration Zone on the 2025 special events calendar and an exemption to the special event policy guide to exceed the monthly special event limit in the month of September and the daily special event limit on Saturday, September 20th, 2025. Next slide. The LA Kings had initially planned to host an event in 2024. In June of last year, a late application for that event was submitted but did not meet the late application criteria. So staff did not advance it for formal consideration by the commission or the council. However, that same month, council directed staff to advance it for formal consideration and to also allow the commission to review the event at its July 2024 meeting so that the commission can provide informal feedback on the event. Typically, new events do require review and an approval process through a public hearing, but because of that time frame last year, we were not able to meet the public noticing requirements for a public hearing, so it was not reviewed at the commission or council level through a public hearing. The event was reviewed by the commission as a matter for commission consideration and by council as a municipal matter. It was reviewed as a municipal matter in July 2024 by council. It was approved. It was titled the Smart Water Zone and Sprite Chill Zone south of the pier in September, and it provided for an exception to the special event policy guide to exceed the monthly special event limits in September at that time and to also exceed the daily event limits at that time on the Saturday within their proposed dates. Then on August 1st, 2024, the LA Kings provided notice to the city that they had decided to cancel their 2024 event and requested to move the event to 2025. They cited there was not enough time to organize the event in time for September 2024 at the standard that we would all expect. Next slide. Following the 2024 event cancellation notice from the LA Kings, staff worked with the LA Kings to solidify new 2025 event date requests and event details to prepare the event for formal review by the commission and city council, and to allow staff to have commission and city council have that review through the formal public hearing process. So this is a public hearing item tonight, and it was noticed. So the community would have the opportunity to provide input on this event. The 2025 LA Kings event details, well, the event for 2025, the details really are very close to the event that was proposed in 2024. They would like to use the beach south of the pier from essentially the same timeline they had requested in September 24. It's Monday, September 15th through Wednesday, September 17th for setup, Thursday, September 18th through Tuesday, September 23rd for the event, and Wednesday, September 24th for teardown. I think they maybe have added an additional setup activity day or teardown day, but it is really within the same time frame as they had requested in 2024. A partnership with Coca-Cola would be part of the event to launch the start of its 2025 to 2026 season, the LA Kings season that is, and for Coca-Cola to have an opportunity to promote brand products, which are Smart Water and Coke Zero Sugar. And a sport court rink for community members would be part of the event to allow for ball hockey, hockey, and fitness activities, and the ability to interact with LA Kings members and sample Coca-Cola products again. An anticipated 500 participants and 1,000 spectators would be expected each event day. One thing I wanted to note with the Coca-Cola product, the difference really is last year they were going to be focusing the event on not only Smart Water, but Sprite Chill. It was a new Coca-Cola product. So the difference is they're gonna only focus on Smart Water and Coke Zero Sugar with the 2025 event. So that slightly changes the name. It really just replaces Sprite Chill with Coke Zero in the event title. Next slide. There would certainly have to be special considerations that would need to be addressed or made to accommodate the event. And all of these we have been very upfront with the LA Kings on. So first, regarding the Coca-Cola promotion, the LA Kings are requesting the sampling of the products take place on the beach on only the event days of Friday, September 19th through Sunday, September 21st. The special events policy guide mission states that special events should balance resident and visitor needs, are community-friendly, enhance local beach culture, and benefit the local community. The policy guide also includes information on really a sub-program, which is the Pier Plaza Promotion Program, and it's an opportunity for commercial organizations to increase brand awareness and do product or service announcements. So as the sampling component and level of Coca-Cola branding tied with the event does not fall within the purpose of the special event permit program and better meets the purpose of the Pier Plaza promotion, the event days with sampling would be subject to the promotion fee that is used for Pier Plaza promotions. So essentially, we'd just be moving the Pier Plaza promotion to the beach, but still charging the appropriate promotional fee. The next special consideration would, again, have to be the monthly event cap exemption. The limit is a maximum of 15 event days in non-peak season months. This event would result in 25 event days in September, as we have already exceeded our limits with the Hermosa Beach Open. And it would require council approval for an exemption should commission make that recommendation this evening. And again, the policy only allows for 2 events to be scheduled on any given day in the city. Approving this event would result in 3 events on Saturday, September 20th, and that again requires an exception. So the commission went to make that recommendation to City Council. The other 2 events are the city's coastal cleanup in partnership with Heal the Bay and the annual Glow Ride. And speaking to those 3 events happening potentially on the same day, and I just lost my spot in my notes, give me 1 second. Here we are. As the LA Kings request an amplified sound permit for a DJ on their event days, exceeding the daily event limit would lead to really amplified sound on the beach south of the pier and Schumacher Plaza, because the Glow Ride does have its own DJ. So we would add to the event permit, if the event was approved, that the LA Kings must limit announcements and eliminate music from its event at 5:30 p.m., which is the start time for the Glow Ride, just so we don't have any conflicts with the amplified sound. Next slide. Included on this slide before you is the site plan. The Kings are planning to use benches versus bleachers at this time, which is noted on the map. And the LA Kings would also be required to provide ADA access to the sport court rink, and would work with our Public Works Department to update the site plan with those requirements should the event be approved. Next slide. And on this slide is a draft event branding of the sport court rink. And next slide. This does conclude my verbal, and we have requested the event producers be available for questions as well. If approved, staff would present the commission's recommendation on the new Impact Level 3 special event to City Council at its March 25th meeting for review and formal action, and it would also be a public hearing before the City Council.
Awesome, thank you. Any of my commissioners have questions of staff?
One staff question. The 66,000, that would go to the city's bottom line? I mean, that's,
Yes, general fund.
Lauren?
See, I just see that parking is still TBD. Do we have any idea on that?
We do not. We don't have a count for how many parking spaces they would need, but we're very diligent in making sure that it's the least impactful with any of these large-scale events in the downtown area, especially during a busy, busy month.
Yeah, thank you.
Tracy, any questions?
Just a couple. Do we know how, in addition to the general idea of the sport court, what and who is going to be invited to participate on the sport court?
Yes, the LA Kings have shared that they would extend invitations to local schools, just making general awareness about the event, and really any youth sport organizations as well.
Great. And then as far as the Glow Ride, are they aware of the event this new event producer's request to hold their event?
They were not updated since we were dealing with the 2024 event, but we would certainly make them aware of the commission's recommendation this evening, should they wish to provide any comment before it goes through the council's final review and approval.
Because I think their ride might start at 5:30, but their event starts at 3, at least according to the city calendar.
Oh, for registration to begin. So we had talked through this even more, and I'm sorry, it's been a while since we were deep in
Yeah.
the event planning for this, and we got to a point where we had no concern with impact to the event by the time frame that the Kings had shared they would be interested in. The Kings really wanted to focus on the earlier part of the day because they wanted to find a way to support the city's Heal the Bay event. So we would really try to uphold all those arrangements that we made in 2024 so that Glow Ride is
they were all
absolutely not
sharing-
impacted.
They
Because
were
we
all-
share with Glow Ride too.
And they were all sharing the same date in 2024? Okay.
Yes.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Barb?
Can we go over how many events we have in September? I think I'm overwhelmed.
Certainly, it's become our new July.
Okay.
Certainly. We have, I'm sorry, I'm pulling up the calendar here. And I think I know the commission understands what I say, saying this is our new July, but July used to be our most impacted month. For anyone who's listening in, we had an event essentially every day, sometimes 2 events a day in the month of July. So let me get to September and we'll give an overview of how that looks. And this is also attached, should any of the commissioners wish to bring it up and kind of follow along. But we essentially only have, if this event is approved, 5 calendar days that have no event activity. And that is the first. And then Hermosa Beach Open loads in the second and takes place through that Sunday, where that weekend is not only the Hermosa Beach Open, it's a Hermosa Beach concert series and the movies at the beach. And event infrastructure remains in place for the concert series, and we are really working to program the stage during the week so that it's not just sitting on the beach for no reason, essentially. Obviously, there's a reason. It's for the concerts, and we can't unload but we would love to have it have a purpose each day that we were activating it, maybe yoga classes or working with some of our sponsors to provide some fun recreational activities or really anything on that stage during the week. So it says event infrastructure only from the 8th through the 12th, but there's a very real possibility that there will be programming from the city on the stage. And then the second weekend, we have the Movies at the Beach and the Hermosa Beach concert series, and then it would be the LA Kings the third week, going into the third weekend of September, where we have the Coastal Cleanup Day, the Glow Ride, and the Kings would continue that following week through Wednesday, and then we have Locale 90254 at the end of the month.
Right,
And a
but
volleyball tournament.
You
on
gave
the-
us the numbers. Were how many?
So we have, I can tell you how many different events. We have 8 different events in the month of September, and majority of them are impact level 3.
Right, but we are over by how many?
10 event days.
10 of it. And
Approving
so-
the LA Kings would put us at 25 event days
Instead of 15.
instead of our limit of 15.
Okay. And what are they doing on the sport court? Are they playing hockey with, people are running around, we're not doing roller skates or anything, we're just,
It's not synthetic ice like we had with the ice
It
skating
is
rink.
not.
Okay.
No.
okay.
So it's open play, and then if any of the organizations or the school district, they would work to see if they would like to program any play, but there would certainly be open play opportunities for the community, much to like how the Rams had activated the field space.
Okay, those are my questions.
Lisa, do we have somebody from the Kings online?
Do we? Kaylin?
I'm not seeing any event representatives from the Kings.
Were they planned to, or is this an accident.
They had shared with us that they were going to be trying to attend via Zoom. And Madison, is there any other updates? I think they had shared with Madison, our lead special events and filming coordinator, that there was some scheduling conflicts, but that they would make every effort to join us via Zoom.
Well, needless to say, I'll express my frustration and disappointment for their absence, because I have a laundry list of questions for them. So do you mind if I ask you?
Certainly.
Okay. So I guess the only point of reference that we have is the Rams event, which was an A-plus amazing event that set the bar rather high, and I feel that this Kings event was inspired by the success of that. How many days do you recall that the Rams needed load-in?
Let me pull up the 2024 special events calendar.
And I'll continue to speak because they had plaza activation, several plaza activations, plus they decorated the palm trees, and the wow factor was through the roof. And by looking at the application plus the schematics, doesn't look like there's anything going on the plaza. Is that correct?
They would be activating the plaza on the weekend. That would when they would have additional activations, like photo opportunities, very similar, honestly, to what the Rams did.
So right now we're just going to use our mind's eye and imagine that this is going to mirror Rams, right?
Very close.
Okay. I wish we had a
Very
representative
close
here
event
to get
format
into,
to the
get into
Rams.
the details. Okay. I just feel like.
And the Rams had, I'm sorry, Cherry Lang, the Rams had 3 setup days in 2024, and they loaded out on their same day as their last, they loaded out after their event on the last event
and
day.
they were gone.
So they didn't have another teardown day.
And I mean, I'm counting 10 right now. So my question is, how much more sophisticated of an event is this as opposed to the Rams?
Really, the Rams had 9 days
9.
overall, and the Kings did add additional time from last year, which I believe was 9 days then, to just be super safe with the amount of setup or tear down that they needed.
Got it. Okay. And then I'm counting 5 tents on one schematic, and then on the fancy one, I'm counting 3 tents. Or was that 6?
I'm looking at, are you looking at this one?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh.
Those are courts. Those are tents right there, yeah.
Okay.
So just trying to get an idea of how many tents on the beach is it? And I didn't see anything in the application outside of just
Right.
referencing tents.
This is very much a draft at this stage, and it would be limited to any activation space the tents would be limited to activation spaces for the sponsor
Yeah.
and for the Kings, because they plan on having members of the Kings here, so they would need a space for them, and possibly a medical tent, but the amount of tents to really provide for those activations is expected to be at this level.
Okay.
But these are like your basic 10 by 10
Yeah.
tents.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just wondering how many of them.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they can add up quickly and anyhow, that's fine. Have we had any conversations with the Kings or the generous folks at Coca-Cola for sponsoring any of the events throughout the month of September?
Yes, and we had hoped to have some conclusion to share with the commission and city council when we talked about this item through a public hearing, but the LA Kings have shared that they would not be able to provide an answer on any level of sponsorship for the concerts is what we would be, asking for, as it being a city-hosted event. Staff seeks sponsorships for that. Like, we actually approach organizations. So they couldn't provide an answer in time for this review, and we didn't want to prolong it any longer, as we would like to have more time to plan and prepare for this event this year if it should take place and is approved.
And one last question. Provided this commission has a lot of unanswered questions and doesn't feel comfortable with making this recommendation to city council, when would this wind up on our next agenda if we could have a representative from the Kings? Because if we're going to keep referencing Rams, there was constant communication from several entities within that organization with staff, commission, council on a regular basis. So the picture was very clear. This is a very murky picture from my perspective. So I just want to know how that may alter, provided we're still looking for clarification on details.
Staff would just have to prepare the item and republish. And
So April, May, and then once again,
well,
does that
we'd have to
jam up their
republish a public
okay.
hearing because we've already placed a public hearing in the paper, so we would have to look at that time frame. Or would we?
Right, and so once again, I'm never going to
To double check, I thought.
I'm never going to stand in the way if staff would like to, but no, the legal requirement, we published for the public hearing today, as long as we continue it to a date certain here tonight, it is my opinion that a formal published public notice is not required. However, if that's staff's best practice, I'm not going to stand in the way.
So then it could wind up back on next
April.
month's agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have an idea if that would jam up, thank you, that would jam up their promotional timeline? We don't
No.
know.
I don't foresee so. I mean, it was more staff needing to get this item before the commission and city council so that the city has substantial amount of time to plan for an event of this level. And we had worked out a lot of the concerns already when we went through this 2024 event review and approval, like for the event that was essentially canceled, because we addressed all of the commission's feedback at that time, presented it to city council, and we got the event to a place where we were confident we could move forward in the timeline. So a lot of this work has been done, and we're not seeing a different event right now.
Got it.
But I understand them not being here to remind us of a lot of the ins and outs of the event, and it more looking at it from a permitting
Yeah.
standpoint from staff. I
And do you
understand.
foresee them possibly pulling out again?
I don't believe so, no. I mean, that was a concern that was shared because we really dedicated a lot of resources to get this through a very quick turnaround time. But no, I do not foresee that that would happen again.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, go, take it away, Tom.
If we were to continue this, if our motion was to continue this to the first week in April, is it still going to be on the agenda for council on March 25th? And the follow-up question is, could council keep it on the agenda and just approve it regardless of what our opinion is or is not, that it should be continued and heard in full here?
And City Attorney Donegan can correct me if I'm wrong, but it would not automatically remain on the council's March 25th agenda. The only way that that would happen is if council directed it during a future agenda item at the March 11th meeting. And if the commission motions to move this to another meeting for formal consideration, just making note of the items that are on the agenda for April at this time, you know, the contract class program review and the pickleball item, the LA Kings event would be a public hearing again in April. So we would review that event before those matters. And I just want to make sure that that's clear and something that the commission's aware of when just thinking ahead on that agenda.
And Madam Director has it exactly right.
Basically what she said.
Lauren, any thoughts for discussion?
Yeah. Did we need to open this up for any public comment?
I think
Or did we?
no, we
Correct.
haven't yet.
I only heard questions so far, but yes, if we want to get into deliberations, we can go to public comment.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll wait till then.
You wait, okay.
Yeah.
Now I'd like to open this up to public comment.
This is the time for members of the public to address the commission on this item only. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. We will begin with members of the public wishing to provide comments in our chamber, if any.
Oh, I see none.
Seeing
Anybody online?
none, we'll move on to virtual public comment. If you're joining the meeting by phone, please remember to dial *9 to unmute yourself and *6 to raise your hand. And I am not currently seeing any hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So we'll close public comment now and bring it back to the dais for discussion.
Okay. Well, it makes me feel reassured that staff has already done a lot of work on this, and I don't see it as a bad thing if we continue it to our next meeting to give the sponsors of the event the opportunity to share more details on the event with us. I still think that should give everybody enough time to do what they need to do to make for a successful event. And Lisa, as you said, since you've done a lot of the legwork already, hopefully that doesn't jam you up too much. If we postpone it till our beginning of April meeting, and that way we just are, getting everything right and getting all the questions answered on it. And I think it's fair for everybody all around. I think it's an exciting event. We all support the Kings, but I think if we give them the chance to, well, most of us do. I support the Kings. And but if we give them that chance to answer any questions, because I think we do have questions for them.
Thank you. Tracy?
Is it a fair assessment, if my recollection's correct, when the representative from the Kings was here last year at our commission, it wasn't the most fleshed out event? We had some concerns, and I remember voicing them. Is it a fair recollection to say they were more prepared and had a better fleshed out event when they came to city council and it was approved at council?
Yeah, because staff worked with them to address all the commission's concerns so that when we took the item to city council, we could lay out those concerns and what the Kings were going to do in response, or how the event was going to be modified to address those concerns.
Because I remember really vividly that my concern was that it seemed like a commercial. It just seemed like a Coca-Cola commercial. And I will say, it doesn't have that same feeling now. It does seem like it is a more LA Kings activated event sponsored by their sponsor. So in that regard, I feel a little better about it than I did at this position last year. Hypothetically, if we were to continue this item until our April meeting and council still decided to put it on their agenda for March 25th, then what happens to our
Recommendation?
meeting?
Right, so
I see the movement.
Correct, so as the ultimate city decision maker, the city council can do
Right.
that. So if they decide at the next meeting to put it on their 25th, then yes.
It would not come back
It would
here.
not come back.
Okay.
Well, once again, depending on what happens at the 25th. Madam
No
Director.
one has a crystal ball.
Right, Madam Director would, I'm sure, adequately explain what happened here tonight, if that is the will of the commission. But yeah, I do want to be sure that if the city council decides to say, we want to hear it right at our next meeting, that would then likely vitiate your guys' ability to review it.
That's why, thank you. That's why I want to make sure that our conversation here is as cohesive and comprehensive as we can make it in the event they're watching and listening and reviewing what we say in light of the potential that they go ahead and approve it or not at their meeting.
Barb?
Well, if we were going to vote on this tonight, I would vote no. I'm very disappointed with the presentation that we have. I don't really know what they're doing. We don't know that they're reaching out to the schools. We don't know much. And yeah, I am disappointed they're not here. They're spending thousands and thousands, and are they assuming that their name is going to get that approved? I'm not sure. We're way over our limit of events, which I'm usually will vote to go over the limit, but I would not vote to approve this to go over our limit for something that I don't understand what they're doing. So I'm very disappointed. So I don't plan on supporting this at this time in any way.
Thank you, Barb. I'm right there with Barb, and yeah, Tracy, you're 100% correct. Last year seemed like a commercial. I don't see any difference other than a couple of changes on the sitemap, which are, quite frankly, I don't trust. I have a laundry list of questions. We've been doing this way too long, and we've worked with some of the best people in the industry, and the one thing that we ask is please come to the Parks and Rec meeting and let us, for the event producers, and for them to not be here without any sort of explanation or anything like that really bums me out, particularly how last year went. You know, we asked some poignant questions, staff worked diligently, and then they backed out last minute. We don't even know if that's going to happen again. And you know, to Barb's point, what kind of community outreach? We know exactly what the Rams did. They did such a spectacular job. Constant communication, nonstop with everybody, and we haven't heard anything. And the night that we make a recommendation, no one's here. Has anybody called in yet? You don't see anything?
I'm still not seeing any
No?
event
Okay.
representatives.
You know, like I said, the list of questions go on. I'm sure we all share the same ones because we've done this for so long. I don't know what's going on either. It doesn't seem as much of a commercial as last year, but it still seems like a commercial. It looks beautiful. I'm sure, I hope that it'll be executed that way, but I cannot recommend this event without an event producer here. Any other thoughts? Does anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I will bring the motion, but let me just say, I agree. I'm really with Barb with the way she is thinking. I would not vote yes based on what we've heard today because of the event limits, but I could certainly see myself voting yes if this was a really incredible, unique event and they had a lot of details, and none of that is here today. So what I would do is move that we continue this public hearing until April 4th. Is that sufficient, Pat? Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
I'll second that.
We can make sure that's the right date, right? That is the next date.
Give me one moment, please.
Wait a minute.
Wait.
Is this the right date? Sorry, we're confirming the date, because
Yeah,
After I say
I
yes.
apologize, Commissioner Moroni, you said April.
I think it's the 1st, actually. I said the 4th. What day is it?
Correct, yes, so that's it.
It's the first.
First, okay.
April
There it
1st.
is. So the second of the motion accepts that change to April 1st?
Yes.
Thank you.
Voting is now open. Vice Chair Pizer Maines,
Yes.
Chair Lang,
Yes.
motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to matters for commission concerns, consideration, pardon me.
Okay, well, we're just queuing up this presentation. I'll go ahead and start, and then I'll just direct when to, beautiful. Okay, we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this item is the staff's recommendation for the commission to receive and file the Green Belt Pedestrian Trail and South Park Accessible Playground Renaming Subcommittee, which will further be called subcommittee, as I referenced the subcommittee in the report, and recommend to City Council an adoption of a resolution naming the Green Belt Pedestrian Trail in honor of Casey Rohr and Jeff Hirsch, and renaming the South Park Accessible Playground in honor of Casey Rohr, and approving acknowledgement of each renaming with a bench and plaque at each location. Next slide. In August 2024, City Council formed the Green Belt Pedestrian Trail Naming Subcommittee and appointed Mayor Pro Tem Saman and Councilmember Detoy to the subcommittee. And then in September 2024, Commission selected Commissioners Ellman and Horowitz to serve on the subcommittee to work collectively with the Council subcommittee. Next slide. Then in January, council expanded the work of the subcommittee to include consideration of the renaming of the South Park Accessible Playground in honor of Casey Rohr. The group has formed their recommendations, and I will go over those in the next slide. And these recommendations that I am going over in these upcoming slides are what is really expanded on in the subcommittee report as well. So the first renaming proposal is to rename the Greenbelt Pedestrian Trail the Jeff Hirsch and Casey Rohr Greenbelt Accessible Trail. Hirsch began using a wheelchair as a result of a stroke and devoted his time advocating for the beach cities to become more accessible for all. Jeff served as a member of the city's Access Hermosa working group, and that Access Hermosa working group was created to advise and support the city in improving accessibility throughout the city. And improving accessibility to the Greenbelt was one of the group's top goals and one of the top projects of the group that Jeff had advocated for. Casey was born with cerebral palsy and used a wheelchair. He demonstrated his support of the Greenbelt Pedestrian Trail project to City Council. He supported his mother Beth's work on the Access Hermosa working group, and also the group's advocacy to improve accessibility to the Greenbelt. So the subcommittee finds the renaming fitting to recognize these late Hermosa Beach residents and their advocacy for accessibility on the Greenbelt. To acknowledge the naming, a bench would be placed on the east side of the Greenbelt Pedestrian Trail on an existing concrete pad, which would allow for ADA seating next to the bench. Additionally, a plaque would be placed on the bench with the proposed name of the facility and the text shown before you on the slide and within your staff report. Next slide. The second recommendation is to rename the South Park Accessible Playground the Casey Rohr Accessible Playground. Casey wished for a park that was accessible to all children, and his mother, Beth, served alongside a group of volunteers that advocated for the renovation of South Park. In 2016 is when that renovation took place. Casey was not only an inspiration for the project, but he was also involved in designing the universally accessible playground. So the subcommittee did find this proposed renaming fitting in honor of Casey. Installation of a plaque on an existing bench overlooking the accessible playground would acknowledge the naming. CIP 603 South Park Slope Irrigation and Landscape Improvements would allow for the installation of a concrete pad underneath that existing bench, which would then allow for ADA seating next to the bench. The anticipated project completion date is in July 2025 for that CIP. So therefore, if this is approved, the plaque would not be installed until that project has been completed. Next slide. Additionally, if the subcommittee's recommendation would be approved, the city shall coordinate a celebration for the renaming of the Greenbelt Pedestrian Trail in June 2025. That is Hirsch's birthday month. And a celebration for the renaming of the South Park Accessible Playground would take place in August 2025, following the anticipated completion date of the CIP for the South Park Slope Irrigation and Landscape Improvements. And this is part of the subcommittee's recommendation as well, as we did discuss these months for those celebrations. Next slide. Should the commission approve staff and the subcommittee's recommendation to the city council, it would be presented to council at its March 25th meeting for review and formal action. And that concludes my staff report.
Thank you. Any questions? Tom?
Sure. Are we talking about renaming the entire Greenbelt and not just the accessible portion?
It's just the pedestrian trail.
Right, and if the city were to expand the accessible portion, it would still just be the 4 blocks?
If the city were to expand it, would we continue the naming to the expansion? I think that would be something we'd have to discuss at the time of discussing a possible expansion and get clear direction from the city council. I don't want to make assumptions, but.
All right, let me, looking at the resolution.
The one for the Greenbelt?
For the Greenbelt, the actual resolution is we're approving the renaming of the Greenbelt Pedestrian Trail in honor of Jeff Hirsch and Casey Rohrer, which implies that it's the entire Greenbelt.
Through the CIP project for the Greenbelt, it has been titled, that portion of the
That
Greenbelt
portion?
has been titled the Greenbelt Pedestrian Trail.
All right.
I had to correct myself a lot in the report because I kept writing Greenbelt Accessible Trail, but that is the formal name for that area. The entire Greenbelt is the Greenbelt, period. So that was the reason. I know it can be a little confusing. I had to correct myself.
All right. And what was done as part of the subcommittee work to evaluate whether the change in name has, quote, broad public support?
It's really the public input opportunities through the naming policy and the process for reviewing or making considerations of renaming is really through these agendized meetings. There's no additional outreach that takes place. We have spoke to the family of Casey Rohr and informed them of the subcommittee's recommendation, but that has been the extent of outreach at this point.
You haven't received any written comment, phone calls?
No, we haven't received any direct correspondence regarding the renamings. There has been talk outside of public meetings and maybe even mentioned at several city council meetings that when this project would be completed for the Greenbelt, that we would likely consider a naming to really honor individuals who were on the Access Hermosa working group or the working group in general. So that I think is really the extent of that. And then with the South Park Accessible Playground, Casey was very involved. He spoke at the ribbon cutting ceremony. He was the one who cut the ribbon with his family. And council did direct that during a future agenda item to formally name that area. And that's been...
Did the subcommittee or has the city in the past ever considered naming the Greenbelt for anyone else?
Not that I'm aware of, and the subcommittee, we limited the conversations really to Jeff Hirsch and Casey Rohr. I believe, and this is not finalized yet, as there's no formal application, that the Access Hermosa group wants to maybe donate a bench acknowledging the group as a whole through the Memorial Bench program, but that's separate outside of this recommendation.
All right, those are the only questions I have of staff.
Thank you. Lauren?
So it is a little bit confusing. So you're saying that the Greenbelt pedestrian trail is just referring to from Pier to 8th?
Correct.
Okay. Is what I would recommend, because the whole thing is a pedestrian trail, or it's supposed to be a pedestrian trail, the entire Greenbelt. Is it a trail?
If I
Pedestrian
can
trail?
interject, the name that
Yeah.
was proposed was the Greenbelt Pedestrian Accessible Trail.
Accessible
The
trail.
the word accessible is in,
In the proposed renaming,
yes.
It is in
We're-
the
The proposed renaming
right.
actually dropped pedestrian, and we have, the subcommittee and staff have put in the recommendation to name it the Jeff Hirsch and Casey Rohr Accessible Trail,
Okay.
that portion. It's currently named the Greenbelt Pedestrian Trail. That's just me maintaining what the name was in the CIP and
Okay.
throughout all the council reports.
Got it.
But we're removing pedestrian and focusing on like
Accessible.
accessible
So just to
in this
clarify, so that-
recommendation.
Yeah.
Hopefully that would give some better
Clarity.
description of,
That sounds
scope of
good.
it.
And then I'm not looking at, I don't have a copy of the resolution, but maybe in the resolution or maybe in the motion, we could include the Greenbelt accessible pedestrian trail and then just say between, Pier and 8th, just so we're clarifying the area.
Correct, if that's the will of the commission, and I believe that was never the intent of the subcommittee or the naming, but if that's the direction, we'll be sure to relay that to city council.
I mean, just to clarify, if that is the intent for that section, yeah.
there will be, if I'm not mistaken, a page dedicated on the city website
Yes.
to who Jeff Hirsch is and was in Casey Roar. So it would give the city or any visitors who are looking at the plaque direction as to what this is. And so we can even be specific in the wording on the website that it's from Pier to 8th.
Even the proposed wording on the plaque is clear about that as well, so that anyone who's on the Greenbelt and sees that name on the plaque would understand this is limited to the accessible area on the Greenbelt.
Yeah, that's great, and I think it's a really wonderful thing. I'm just saying in terms of a motion or a resolution, that just needs to be a little bit clearer.
Thank you. Tracy?
I'm good.
Barb, any questions or anything?
No questions.
Okay. I'll now open it up to public comment.
This is the time for members of the public to address the commission on this item only. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Seeing no one in the chambers, we'll open it up to virtual public comment. If you're joining the meeting by phone, please remember to dial *9 to unmute yourself and *6 to raise your hand. I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll close public comment and bring it back to discussion or a motion.
Well, I would first like to say I couldn't be prouder to be part of such a great subcommittee. And I think that what we've done is unusual, it's special, and it was started by 2 people that struggled with an illness or an unfair birth. And I just couldn't be prouder of them for starting this. And I'm just happy that we were able to finish it. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Tom?
Well, I do have concerns, but I would say they're somewhat lessened if we make it clear that we're only talking about the 4-block area. And obviously, these 2 individuals have made a difference. We now have an accessible portion of the Greenbelt. I understand that, and they deserve to be recognized for that, and that's all true. But when I was going through over the last year, I've been spending time in newspaper databases and coming up with the history of how all our parks are named. And we do have a lot of individually named parks, but all of them have a story that's pretty big, as far as either being someone that's really involved in the community for decades and decades over many, many different things, or was a school teacher for 30 years, or with Jeff Duclos' garden. I mean, he was uniquely responsible for having the garden put in place. And then we have some parks that were named because people donated money, Schaefer, Noble, and Schumacher Plaza. That's just money coming into the city. To me, this is most akin to the Duclos situation where we're being asked to name the park because of someone's contribution to the development of the park. With the Greenbelt, and I'm not telling anybody up here anything they don't know, so I'm sort of doing this in case anybody's watching and don't paint me as some sort of miserable miser person. With the Greenbelt, there were so many people involved in making sure we even have a Greenbelt. And we can only have an accessible portion of the Greenbelt because, in fact, we have a Greenbelt. That goes back to 1982. Rosamond Fogg became the most visible spokesperson for those efforts. But even she said, and I just found something where she was commenting to the press, by the time she formed her group in 1986, she said, I telephoned neighbors and put out flyers in mailboxes. At first, 25 people joined, and in 2 months there were 200, and now the membership is near 1,200. There's a huge number of people who were involved in getting this put on the ballot for an initiative. It passed with 89% of the vote, which at one time was the highest the highest percentage ever for an initiative in California. I don't know if that record still stands, but it's an incredible percentage. All of that took place long before this, and so I'm uncomfortable with leapfrogging that. I think if we were to name this the Greenbelt, and I don't know that we have to. I mean, the Greenbelt sounds a perfectly good name to me. We don't have to have a name on everything. I think we would have to give more attention to the people who were involved in the 80s with making sure that we had a Greenbelt, because it was quite the fight. As for the South Park, I'm not, that also had a number of people involved in it, including Jessica, was it Guheen, right? And Casey's mother, but that had a group of about 30 people involved in it. That's not as large, and it wasn't as dramatic and contentious and years-long process as the Greenbelt, and naming, a portion of South Park or the playground, I don't have any great objection to. But I'm just not comfortable in putting the name on the Greenbelt unless we really go through the whole thing and make sure there's broad public support, because I don't think there will be broad public support for naming this portion. I don't think we've made the effort to see if there is broad public support for that, but that's my comment.
Thank you, Tom. Lauren?
Well, I think that's probably a question for the subcommittee, in terms of how much your sense of community support for this effort. And, I'm just, it's just a shame that both Jeff Hirsch and Casey are no longer with us to enjoy the accessible pathway.
Thank you. Tracy?
I guess I would go to the absence of negative comments. Looking back, could we have made a bigger effort to reach out to the public to say, do you support this? Possibly. Was that done? Not to my knowledge, but we've talked about it in this commission. We formed the subcommittee, and we've received no negative comments at all. So if you talk about tacit approval, I guess that would qualify. Tom, to your point, I hear what you're saying, and I think it is pretty clear that the portion of the Greenbelt we're talking about is from Pier to 8th. I would probably, as you would, take exception to the whole thing. I grew up in Manhattan Beach, and we have the Greenbelt there, and it runs, consecutively for 6 miles through both cities, and because of the efforts of a lot of people. And so I agree, it's not like a big banner's going over the, it's marking the efforts of 2 individuals, and obviously the support they had from their families and their friends and the Hermosa Beach Accessible Group, Access Hermosa, to install a bench in their honor, a plaque in their honor, and the significance that goes along with that to their friends and their family. So I guess that's what I would say to that.
Barb?
This is why you can't leave. So I'm not going to say I knew Rosamond Fogg well, but I knew Rosamond Fogg, and I know how hard she and the residents worked. And what I would say is that she would not want that. But I think that what we're trying to do here is move the city forward in a way, and that is to make things accessible to all. And I don't think there's anything wrong with thanking the 2 people that started it and worked hard. Casey worked through his mother. Jeff, who I worked with for a number of years, just was nonstop. And I don't think, in fact, I know this would not have happened if it hadn't been for these 2 people. So I don't have a problem taking this very small portion of the Greenbelt and acknowledging them for their efforts. I think you've brought up some great points, but I do think that when the residents in this town are upset about something, disappointed, they don't have a problem coming and letting us know. So I think we've done a good job, and I am not the least bit concerned that someone's going to say, well, no one ever told us. I think people who are going to pay attention are paying attention, and most people, it's not that they don't care, they're busy, and it's really not that big a deal to them. It's a big deal to people that have worked on it for a number of years. So I'll leave it at that. But I do appreciate your point.
Thank you. Yeah, Tom, wonderful, wonderful points. Many of us do recall the railroad tracks that were in place before the Greenbelt. And I look at what we're seeing here is an evolution that meets the community's needs. And, you know, nothing but respect to every single person who changed the tracks to the Greenbelt, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. You know, I feel that there is the opportunity to champion a bench to recognize them if that is the will of the community and if somebody wants to spearhead it. But what we have now is something that is equally groundbreaking to removing the tracks that was brought to us through the hard work of two wonderful folks. And, you know, when Jeff said, hey man, it's hard to get around Hermosa Beach and I'm gonna change it, and I thought that was the most punk rock thing I've ever heard. And he worked hard and Casey's family worked hard to make this town better. So I don't have a problem moving forward with the bench recognition in both of their names. And like Commissioner Horowitz said, we're not putting a banner over anything, we're just placing a bench to pay tribute to their vision to make our quality of lives better. Does anybody have a motion or further discussion?
I'd like to see if someone from the subcommittee would like the honor of making the motion, but I would like to recommend that in the motion, we note not only this is in honor of Casey and Jeff Hirsch, if that is the motion that is entertained, but also note the name, that it still includes the Greenbelt, and that it would be the Jeff Hirsch and Casey Rohr Greenbelt Accessible Trail, and also note that it runs specifically from Pier to 8th.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend the renaming of the Greenbelt pedestrian trail to the, it's gonna mess me up.
I think we have to use the word
Greenbelt
accessible.
Yeah, I got that. The Greenbelt Accessible Trail in honor of Jeff Hirsch and Casey Rohr. The wording as mentioned in our report, and to the accessible playground in South Park in memory of Casey Rohr. An amendment for the Greenbelt Accessible Trail, that it runs from Pier Avenue to 8th Street.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Voting is now open. Vice Chair Pizer Maines,
Yes.
Chair Lang.
Yes.
Voting is now closed. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to future agenda items. Any requests from the commissioners? No? All right. Meeting adjourned, everybody. Thank you very much. We'll see you in April.